Companies are to be represented and include the mobile operator Orange, the energy group GDF Suez and the engineering firm Alstom. The three-day visit comes, of course, just after President Hassan Rouhani spoke to the World Economic Forum, urging the international community to reinvest in his country. France's finance minister says the trip should encourage Iran's government to cooperate in nuclear talks. Charlotte Hawkins has the story.
It's the biggest show of interest in Iran by Western businesses in over a decade. Oil giant Total, engineer Alstom, telecoms group Orange and car maker Renault are among 100 French companies visiting Tehran on Monday. They're hoping to take advantage of the relaxation of sanctions on Iran, which has a population of 76 million. The country is particularly attractive to the car industry. In spite of unusually high import tariffs, unofficial figures indicate that Iranians spent $4 billion on imported cars last year. Renault had been selling nearly 100,000 cars a year before sanctions were introduced. It's now resumed shipments to parts of Iran.
We think that Iran is a great market. We want to contribute to the development of this market. Even with all the sanctions, this market reached a level of 600 to 700,000 cars a year, which makes it even in these dramatic conditions, the largest market in the Middle East.
No contracts are expected to be signed on this week's trip, but some Iranian businessmen say they're likely to agree on tentative deals. Since the start of sanctions relief, billboards advertising international brands have sprung up. Iran feels it can offer a lucrative venture for foreign companies, with thousands of sales and service points already in place.
Well, for more on the story, I'm joined by Sanam Chantier, who's been looking into this. Thanks for being with us, Sanam. First of all, who's taking part in this delegation and what are they hoping to achieve?
Well, a delegation of some of France's largest companies have actually flocked to Iran to take advantage of this temporary easing of sanctions. Now, some of them, as we've heard, were already operating in Iran prior to the implementation of the measures. Now, the question is who is there? Although France's largest employers' union, MEDEF, has been rather tight-lipped about which companies have sent executives, they did confirm to me that there are over 100 firms, with the leader of the delegation being Patrick Blanc, who is the president of the French car makers group. Now, that's no surprise considering that the French car manufacturers have already been putting feelers out in Iran, especially with Peugeot and Renault, who were there in November during an automotive conference. Rightly so, Peugeot was once shifting over 400,000 vehicles per year in Iran. So as a result of the sanctions, around 10 million euro per month of their profit was cut. As for Renault, we heard in the package that they have actually already started shipment to the Iranian capital, and they're hoping that their production line in the country will increase in the first half of 2014. Now, returning to Iran for businesses is an opportunity not to be missed, it seems, because you have a market of around 77 million people. Also, it's one of the world's largest oil and gas reserves, so no surprise that Total is one of the big giants in the country at the moment. We have other names, such as the French banks, telecom groups, pharmaceutical and aviation companies who've also been cited to be part of this trip.
Clearly, this is an important opportunity for the Iranian economy itself after years of the kind of isolation you've just alluded to. What will Iranians be gaining from this?
Well, as we know, the successive measures have very much prohibited almost all of Western trade with Iran. The country's business community is now very much in need of not only foreign investment, but technology to revive its industries. Now, the country's domestic industries are in particularly bad shape. Some of them have gone bankrupt. The others are operating below their capacity. I talked about the car industry earlier. Iran's car production was almost halved between 2011 to 2013. So it went from 1.7 million to just 500,000. So that's just one example. The cost of life for ordinary Iranians has also increased dramatically. The inflation rate at the moment stands at 40%, if you compare that to France's under 1%. So potentially with the plunging of the actual currency and the shortage of medicine, what's there not to gain from this trip? I was in Tehran myself last week, and there's definitely a sense of hope and relief, especially as the Iranians are today witnessing the return of these foreign companies to secure themselves a place in the market.
And finally, clearly interest from both sides, but there will be caution on the part of those foreign investors as they tread once again on the Iranian market. How feasible is it that the ties, despite the enthusiasm on one side and the other, will actually translate into solid economic partnership?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that for the business delegation that's in Iran at the moment, this is an investigative visit. It's aimed at contact making. So no actual contracts will be signed over the next few days. And as you mentioned, there is an air of caution from both sides. The French finance minister, Moscovici, said over the weekend that Iran has to show its commitment to this deal. And the Iranians, on the other hand, may be a little bit hesitant, as France was the country that blocked the nuclear deal back in November. There also may be some hesitation, as we have to remember this is only a 6-month preliminary agreement as talks continue toward a more long-term deal. So that could expire after this period is up. Another hurdle to keep in mind is the very tough sanctions on Iran's banking sector, which are still in place. But interestingly, the Iranians don't see this as a major obstacle. In fact, the economic counselor to the Iranian embassy here in Paris, Behzad Azarsa, told me that the sanctions imposed on the Islamic Republic haven't actually prevented Iran's trade with the outside world. What they've done is shift Iran's business from Europe mainly to Asia. So Iran is still generating around 30 billion euros a year. So what they're saying is it's to the advantage of both parties if a balanced long-term agreement is implemented, and hopefully Iran can once again become the Middle East economic powerhouse.
Sanam Chantier, thank you very much indeed for all of that. It's time now for a look at the latest sports headlines, starting with European football.
Fifth place Marseille missed the chance to make up ground when they drew 2